it says it's doing it. Come on. There we go. All right, so we should be recording now. All right, well, welcome everyone to the July board meeting for UTRU. So in attendance right now, we've got I'm just going to read across my screen. So we got Chris Stout, Austin Whitehead, Randy Atkin, John Pearson, and Mike Christensen. All board members. We do have a quorum, and so this is theoretically open to the public as well. So if they do pop on, we will of course admit them in. First order of business, and then we'll just start going through, is the approval of the June minutes. Everybody have a chance to take a look at that. I can pull it up if you need me to. But if there's no discussion, I just need a motion and a vote.
I motion we approve the minutes.
Okay, Randy motion. And a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Sounds good. Okay. All right. So that's out of the way. So I will get those officially published and all that good jazz. So next item of business. I just want to start off with kind of a brief synopsis of what I've been working on over the past month or so since we last met. Let me pull that up really quick. And just kind of combine that with some numbers as well, just kind of give you an idea of how we are growing. So since we last met, I put in 19 hours since June 16th. Since then, I've appeared on the Red Line podcast, as well as KRCL Radioactive, as well as preparing and distributing the newsletter as far as the media and outreach side of things are concerned. For fundraising, I started a UCAIR grant application on my own, and then working with John as well, we met with Emily Paskett of UCAIR regarding a separate grant that he's mostly kind of spearheading, but I think UTRU can potentially play a role in that as well, and we'll talk about that a little bit later in the show. See, I'm still in radio mode in the meeting. As far as networking is concerned, quite a bit of movement over the past month or so, at least in my opinion on that. So first of all, actually just earlier this week, I attended the Sweet Streets networking event that they held down at Fisher Brewery. Made some really good contacts, particularly with Heal Utah and some of the stuff that they are doing over there. I did also start an outreach spreadsheet, which we'll talk about a little bit later. I met with Beth Holbrook. She is actually a member of the UTA Board of Trustees, if you are unfamiliar. And then I also submitted my application to be on the Wasatch Front Regional Council Wasatch Choice Community Advisory Committee. So I should be hearing back about that if I made it on sometime in early to mid-August, so relatively soon. As far as some upcoming activities to make you guys aware of, thanks to that meeting with Beth Holbrook, I will be meeting with UTA Executive Director Jay Fox on August 2nd. I just confirmed a meeting with Bike Walk Provo. I'm going to be meeting with their executive board on August 16th. Right before the meeting, I heard back from Heal Utah. We are trying to find a date that I can talk to them and their leadership as well. So yeah, that's kind of some of the activities that I've been up to over the past month. As far as kind of membership numbers are concerned, just to kind of give you an idea, as of this time last month, we picked up 71 new Twitter followers. That's an increase of 34%. We're now sitting at 276 followers, and our ratio officially flipped. We now have more followers than we follow. So that's, a minor but important step as far as Twitter is going. And then as part of that, and I don't know why I didn't think about this sooner, but actually starting this week, if anyone starts to follow us, I DM them directly and say, hey, don't you want to become a member? Here's how you follow the link. I don't know why I didn't think of that sooner, but it's already just in the past couple of days that I've been doing it. It's shown some positive success. We've gotten 19 new subscribers/members over the past month. That's a 66% increase. We're now sitting at 46 members in total, at least on our mailing list. I think with continued outreach, we will continue to grow. So that's kind of the long and short of what I've been up to since we last met. I've obviously kind of been communicating with some of you individually, and also thank you for your help on the newsletter and getting those articles in. If yours wasn't in this month, it'll be coming up. So just kind of, yeah, any questions, comments, thoughts, suggestions?
I'm crying tears of joy.
I'm happy I can please you since you're the one that gives me money to do this. So I will be sure to keep that up.
Yeah, well, you know, it's been so tough just me trying to hold the road. So I can't tell you how much I appreciate that.
Sure.
Even if I am paying you.
Well, I mean, it's a lot of it is a labor of love as well. Like I'll mention it now. Like by far our most popular tweet, I don't know if you guys saw it, was that map of like the proposed hypothetical. I mean, that I'm not billing UTRU for that. That was me just farting around. And I said, this actually might be something worth publishing. And it was actually extremely popular. We got, I think it was 8,000 engagements with it. So it made the rounds pretty well. And Chris, I know that you're going to we'll talk about something very similar in just a moment, but that's one of the reasons why I really do kind of want to push Twitter as much as possible, is we can start really directing people towards membership, directing people, building our cloud, getting bigger numbers, that sort of thing. And so I think that there is value in that. On top of all the other activities that I'm, of course, doing on the back end. So, yeah.
Question. So membership, we said we have 19 new subscribers to the mailing list newsletter, and this is a total of how many subscribers?
46. Now, as by way of backstory, unfortunately, we lost the original mailing list that we had, so we're basically rebuilding from scratch.
Which was about 200 people.
Yeah. So we're about a quarter of the way of where we were, and so I think now I personally get the feeling that we're building momentum, and I personally get the feeling like we're getting in front of people more, and we're talking about it more. You know, after the Redline podcast, we had more people sign up. After KRCL, we've already had a couple more people sign up after that, and so continuing to get out there. One of the things I didn't mention because it didn't come to fruition was the fact that I've also started submitting just one at this point article to the letters to the editor. It was just one to the Daily Herald, whatever one's down in Utah County. I can't remember which one it is. But submit a letter to the editor. Haven't heard back. I'm assuming it's not going anywhere, but with the blog post, if it's appropriate, I am going to start sending them out as letters to the editor, kind of work that back end, more traditional route earned media. So I'll continue writing articles and putting it in there as well. So again, just continuing to kind of get in front of people. Every time we get in front of people, our numbers go up. And so I'll continue working on that as well. Any other thoughts, questions, comments? Okay. All right. Well, then the next agenda item is actually Chris and the UTRU service proposal. So Chris, if you want to take over.
Yeah, so basically for years we've talked. So when we started the organization, it was the idea was that we were going to be positive. We were going to be positive about what we're doing. Yeah, we can say that bus service sucks, but and trains are great, and we can say those things, if they're true. But the idea is that we needed to focus on positive, right? We wanted to make it a positive experience. So one of the iterations of there was a Utah Transit Writers that popped up that Tammy Diaz started when they revamped the bus system back in 2007. And one of the reasons why that didn't go anywhere is because, well, when you're just talking about bad stuff and you're talking about things are negative all the time, it just, people don't get excited. So when that map came up, I was like, yep, that's what we need, right? We need that map. So one of the things that we've been working on for years was to come up with a service proposal, right? This is what this is what the system needs to be. This is what we want as writers. So one of the things that I have been working on through my Sorry, just trying to find the map here. Hold on. So one of the things I've been working on is an actual map, an actual route system. And this is, I mean, I've got routes set up over the entire system, but I've been primarily working on trying to get this to something that we can show users and people, and how the system is set up and where you can go and all of that. And one of the primary things is that we have to show people what service they actually have. So this is as of today. These are the bus stops. This is a 1/4 mile radius from every single bus stop that UTA has in the system, and I think this actually goes all the way up to and all the way down and into Tooele, and you can see where there's actually service, right? Well, the bottom line is that there's not great service. Not like what a system would have like this, where there's service all the way around. So one thing that I think we need to do when we head into the annual convention in October is to basically say, hey, this is our map. These are all the schedules we've produced, and tell all your friends. And let's see. So one way to do that is to come up with a list of routes and maps. So as you can tell, this is or looks like a UTA schedule, except it's actually a UTRU bus schedule. This is where we want it to go. These are the time points. This is when we want it to go. This is every 15 minutes. So this would be a 15-minute service between Daybreak and Draper. But as you can see, it's not really. It's like the map that Curtis posted. How to use this schedule. Well, you can't use this schedule for actual service in most cases, as these schedules are proposals for better, faster, and more reliable service that goes to more places. Join us at www.utru.org. Lost, this is the Lost and Found section. Lost, learn more about what UTRU is doing by signing up for our newsletter. Donate, see the proposal here. But effectively, if we market this correctly, when people come to our annual convention, they will have something that they can see, something that they can say, okay, this if I get on board with you guys, you're gonna advocate for service out in Draper, where I live. So I'm looking at this as kind of two things. We do it as a service proposal for the upcoming year. We incorporate whatever changes, like if there's the BRT that shows up in Ogden or in Mid Valley, we incorporate whatever changes that we agree with, whatever UTA has come up with. But I think that we also need to do a 10-year service proposal. And I know this is where Mike's ears pop up, because this is where we start putting in all the new train lines. We run that train out to Tooele, we run it up to Park City. But in our proposal, we show maps and we show it already built. And then we also come up with a timetable that says, hey, you can take a train from Tooele at 5 o'clock in the morning that will get into Salt Lake at 5:30. And, then you hop on your bus to the university, or you hop on tracks down to the IMC, Intermountain Medical Center at 53rd South. So we do two things. We do a service proposal for this is what we want buses and trains to look like this year. And then we do one so 2033 would be when we want all the system to be completed, right? This is how we're going to build people. People are going to get excited. I mean, they saw that map and they go, yes, this is what I want. I want to wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning in Tooele and get to Salt Lake. Right. And then I can take a bus from Salt Lake that gets me wherever I need to go. But the system will be in place. And this is what we're advocating for. right? We can talk about, well, go talk to your councilman, talk to whoever, but this is something that's going to be concrete that people can look at and they can say, yeah, okay, I can see this. This is what we want to do. So without me talking the full half hour.
No, I think that's great, Chris. So where does that exist? Where does that map exist currently?
So I have a subscription that I've paid for to Scribble Maps.
Okay.
And I can send everybody can log in and they can view it, and you can make changes. And you can see all of the different maps that I've been working on. But I can get that out to you. It's going to take a little bit to get set up, but I'll get everybody set up as users so you can use it.
That'd be great. And then kind of as a follow-up, that mock schedule, how difficult are those to put together? Was that just like a one-off thing, or is it relatively easy to do? How does that work?
So I have money that I just spend on useless or useful things. This is just an Adobe
Illustrator.
And all I did was this one right here is actually the 39 schedule.
Gotcha.
So all I did was and this took me, I don't know, 20 minutes to make.
So yeah, I mean, like what I envision with something like this is not only, yes, a comprehensive proposal, but trickling certain routes out, right? Just to continue engagement. I knew that people would like the map, but I didn't know it would be that popular. And so I think if we can trickle things out, especially in underserved areas, so if we specifically start pushing out maps in underserved areas, that I think people will really want to latch onto that, and then that becomes a recruiting tool, right? And so, I'm not necessarily proposing that we do that for every single route that you have, but if we maybe pick 5 or 6, and really kind of create those, and even maybe we can print them out and have them, like you said, print them out, have them available, put them in certain places, just to kind of get the idea going. I could see some real recruitment potential there. So maybe we should start thinking about what specifically we would want to focus in on. But I think that's awesome.
Chris, are you familiar with the process that was done in Houston, the revisioning process of their bus system? Are you thinking about that in terms of a model? Because I think that
Yep.
Bringing the community together around this, first of all, a great idea with and going along those lines. And I think that, bringing the community together to say this is what things could be, but also how do we look at what was done in Houston and a few other cities around the country in terms of their ability to get their transit agencies and states to buy in to the reimagining process and the revisioning process, and how to catalyze that as a kind of a maneuver or a strategic maneuver with this process. And have you thought about that, and what does that look like?
Yeah, so one of the problems is that supposedly we went through a reimagining process here a couple of years ago that was supposed to start in 2019, 2020. But then the pandemic had happened, and then it just basically everything got thrown out the window, right?
And then where's the chat? Sorry I'm trying to post a link and I cannot.
Yeah, I couldn't see it either, Curtis.
That's there. Should WTF, be anyway.
Curtis.
Should be there. Up at the top. Here, let me just tell you what. I'll copy and paste the agenda in and see if maybe it pings for you guys.
Yeah, let's see.
Let's see.
Yeah, so at any rate, the bigger issue is that I think that because of the pandemic and what happened, and it was a okay, so you know who Jarrett Walker is, right? I basically worship the ground he walks on. He's the transit advocate that talks about walkability and making transit systems adapt to what the people use. But one of the things that I don't like about what they talk about is they talk about transit in kind of an either or type thing, right? We can have coverage, but we might not necessarily have the frequency and the coverage. Well, I don't necessarily buy that. I think you can have 100% coverage area at a cost. Now it's going to cost more, but there's going to be a cost. And I think that if the system is 100% coverage with frequent routes, then, you know, if you get 20% using it, that, you know, that's gold. So one of the problems that I think happened with us is that they kind of took that approach. Any type of the meetings or the presentations you went to, I mean, so Jarrett Walker does this deal where they put a map up and then you have strings that you can basically kind of connect a city to, right? And so a green or a longer route is one that's not as frequent, and a shorter one is one that's frequent. So, you know, then you have to kind of work on that. And basically what that is it's an activity to try to make people realize that, you know, resources are finite and you know, those types of things. But what I envision this actually doing is pushing it so that the transit agency and the planning agency are kind of left with people telling them this is what we want, and them basically going, okay, and then actually figuring out how to put these schedules and put the maps that we've designed into play. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So yeah. Basically, if I understand correctly, the problem with some of the reimagining processes that have been run by agencies in the past is the kind of one-for-one service switch out, where you're sacrificing service in some areas to improve it in others. And we want to avoid that process because it just won't work. The system needs, you know, triple the budget at a minimum in order for there to be that kind of functional transit for the Wasatch Front that we imagine.
Yep, and in a lot of ways, so the map that I showed you, the 126 route, it should be a 15-minute route, but only because of the distance that people have to walk to get to the line, right? So when you run that half hour, so I can tell you right now that people on the 126 line they're not going to be as many people as there is on the 209, even though they're 15-minute routes. It's just you can't do that. But you're going to get more people on a 126 route every 15 minutes than you would if you ran it every hour or every half hour, right? So those are the costs that we have to look at. And again, it's what UTA does really, really well is they take the money from one part and then and throw it somewhere else, and they've eliminated service, and that's not good. I mean, they talk when they eliminate service, they talk about it in terms that, well, look what we did over here, right? We created the number one line, Rose Park and all that. Now they have better service. Well, the south end of the valley is a transit desert. And I mentioned this to here right before everybody got on, but one thing that I'd like to do is all of us go down to the south part of the valley, say like at 6:30 in the morning. We spread ourselves around, and then we order a via all at the same time that takes us to the exact same place, and then see exactly what happens. I don't think personally, I mean, I hear that it has problems. I know some people like it, but my guess is that if you have 4 or 5 people separated by 2 or 3 miles and they all want to go to the same place, they're not going to get there all at the same time. It's just I don't think it can happen. So anyway, I could take the entire I could take 4 hours talking about this stuff, but
Yeah.
but no, you're right. You're exactly right. That is the problem with the current reimagining process. Houston did a really good job, and some of what they did, I've drawn on, and you can see these in the maps, because what they did is they took the places like, people want to go to the golf course, people want to go to the shopping area, people want to go to the hospital, they want to go to the parks, they want to go to the schools, and these are all places that, that's what Houston looked at. They looked at the places people want to go, and then put the buses and the trains to go there.
Yeah, kind of how Tucson's model with their light rail is not follow a straight line regardless of what's there, but let's actually put the light rail where the activity centers are.
Yeah,
Similar to what Houston did with looking at its populations.
Yeah, but unfortunately here in Salt Lake County, the better way for us to do it is the straight line, right? The problems that we've come into is taking, the straight line. You look at the number 45 bus, for instance, it starts up at Wasatch, it goes down, goes into 48 South, then it goes back to 45th South, then it goes all the way to Murray Central, and that's not a straight line, and that's why people don't take it. It just doesn't go where they want to go. So
yeah, the frequency times grid network makes it so you can transfer.
All right, let's go ahead and move on, if that's okay with everyone. I think if we want to maybe start discussing offline or just independently via email, kind of what we can make this project look like going forward, I think that can be a good offline activity. So I just kind of want to move on. This one might be brief. I briefly brought up the idea of kind of an activity for when the Vineyard stop opens. When I put this out there, it was before I started reaching out to Bike Walk Provo. So I don't know if maybe we want to do something with them and collaborate. Like I said, I'm not going to be meeting with them until actually after the stop is officially opened. So I don't know if we want to organize something, if we want to see if I can maybe follow up and say, hey, I know that we're meeting officially, but are you guys doing something? Can we glom on? I just kind of wanted to throw that out there, see if there's any ideas, any thoughts, suggestions, what we might want to do.
Yeah, so this is going to be a ribbon cutting type of ceremony with the Vineyard there and everything. And I was reading a little bit about her. I think I emailed everybody with, people talk around sustainability and that kind of stuff. I don't have a great sense of the political background or, the political science aspect of Vineyard and the town there. But Chris, I think the idea for doing a maps, perhaps this could be something we do with Bike Walk Provo, is a transit reimagining of Vineyard. It's a pretty small town. Throw some dedicated bike lanes down, throw a few frequent bus connections down on a map, hand it out at the opening, hand some to the mayor, get the people in the event talking about it, kind of steal the thunder, so to speak, of the ribbon cutting and make it snap a little louder. What do you guys think of that?
We'd have to throw it together quick. I believe it's either the 8th or the 12th. I can't remember the date. I think it's the 12th for the official. I think the first train pulls up on the 8th, but yeah, I think the ribbon cutting is on the 12th. So that can be something. If we want to commit to that, I'm fine with that. I just want to make sure that I don't start putting it out there to bike walk and then we fall flat. So I just want to make sure that we're able to do what we're saying we're doing.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm certainly able to help with some of the GIS or map aspect of that.
Okay.
And I can make something. I've got a little bit of time. I have a week off coming up that week, so my schedule's a little bit better. Okay. And I think it would be a fun thing to do. Could potentially get us some media attention, and maybe start a conversation with that town there. Sure. I would hope Bike Walk Provo would be interested in.
I'm sure they would be, but I can certainly reach out if I can kind of get the feelers out there. I've started a kind of rapport with the ED down there, so if we want to commit to this, I can start pushing that a little bit harder and say, hey, we're thinking of doing this. Does Bike Walk want to glom on? What are you guys thinking? So yeah, if we want to commit to that, I'm fine with that. I just want to make sure that we're doing what we say and say what we do. So okay, cool.
And if we're talking about
go ahead, Randy.
Some media attention, it might be good to reach out right now.
Mm-hmm.
I think the Tribune has that Daily Buzz thing and some other kind of local interest groups.
Yeah, one of the problems with the media is that, and the Tribune is especially this way, but they're not, they don't really focus much on, so whenever they have a positive thing that UTA is doing, Lee Benson, I don't know, maybe he's dead now. I don't know. Yeah, I haven't seen any of his articles, so I don't know if he's still working at the Tribune or not. But whenever UTA would have something positive to say, he'd always come to me and he'd interview me. But the only thing that ever showed up in the Tribune was when I said something negative against UTA, right? And so, you know, the media in a lot of ways won't care. Now, if we flip over a bus and set it on fire, yeah, they'll show up. But
Well, this is the part where I remind you, Chris, that we're recorded, so this could be in a court case later on down the road.
well, you know,
But
I'm getting to be such an old guy that, you know, the bottom line is that type of thing is what gets noticed. So, you know, we have to work. And I agree, Randy. I think we have to do that, but we have to work a little bit harder to kind of figure out how we really get noticed without
I
it
think
being negative.
I think, and then Austin, I see you want to
Sure.
chime in, so I'll give you a chance in just a second. But I think, like with things like those maps, that's something actionable, right? That's something that people can actually hold and touch and look at and talk about. And so, you know, I think those sorts of activities, I think, can help us quite a bit. Austin, go ahead.
Make sure everybody's aware there is like an official opening event for the Vineyard station opening August 12th at 7:30 p.m. There's a drone show and a concert, and it sounds like they're expecting a pretty decent turnout. They're giving the first 750 people receive a day pass from UTA.
Nice.
Okay. So it sounds like there's going to be, you know, a decent amount of people there, and it's just like having a presence, having a booth, setting people, like, you know, having stuff to set up and to kind of talk to people as they're getting on and off the station.
Yeah. So I
Yeah.
can actually bring that up with, I know he's going to say no specifically, but with the ED of UTA, just saying, hey, is it okay if we do this thing? Don't say yes, but, you know, just kind of make sure that they're aware of what we're doing. Maybe that's a possibility. I mean, it is a First Amendment thing, blah, blah, blah. We can do it. But if we can at least kind of get a nod, that does make things a little bit easier. So, okay.
So maybe-
sorry, go ahead, Randy.
I just had an idea. What if we just kind of do our own press release kind of thing on social media and have someone come and videotape things, and maybe we, you know, do a little interview or whatever where we can control what gets said and go to the thing, and then we can publish it later on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook, whatever.
I'm sure we could do something like that. Again, I just want to make sure that we think it through and it's not just kind of a last minute thing. So, but I'm sure we could throw something like that together as well, like our own ribbon cutting, so to speak. So yeah, maybe let's take that offline too and start some emails and see what we may want to do on that front too. Okay, so if everyone's okay, let's go ahead and move on. The next item is fundraising contacts. I can't find it. I thought I had it. But a while back, I emailed to all of you guys concerning just like, hey, here's a list of some of the names that we came up with during the last meeting. Does anybody have any contacts with these organizations as far as trying to see if we can get some more funds? So yeah, I just kind of want to see if anybody's kind of started making any headway, any thoughts as far as who we can be reaching out to, if we've reached out to anyone. We'll talk about UCAIR in a minute. But yeah, I just wanted to kind of throw that out there, see if there's been any activity on that front. Crickets.
Yeah, I apologize, but I have good intentions and poor execution on that.
Yeah.
But maybe you can resend the list that we talked about, and
Sure,
we can double our efforts again.
Yeah, I can definitely do that. And I kind of want to make sure I started a Google Doc. That's why I say I couldn't find it. But I want to make sure that we have like a living document of like who we've reached out to, who's the best contact, you know, all of these sorts of things. And so it'll be something that we're continually updating. Hey, even if it's just, you know, 3 a.m., scribble down the name of, oh, maybe we should reach out to this company or this, you know, nonprofit or whatever. I just kind of want to make sure that we are constantly thinking about these things. And, you know, when the mood strikes you. So, okay, I will resend that list. That's not a problem.
Curtis,
And
the only
then,
thing
yeah.
I see and shared with my Gmail is the partner organizations.
I wonder if I can't find, yeah, like I said, I think I just sent it in an email.
I think that's the
I did
same.
it in
That's the same list, John.
Is that the same list?
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay, maybe I didn't. Maybe I thought about it. Maybe it was a fever dream. So I will put that list together. How about that? And then we can start kind of working on that. But again, mostly with the idea that this is a living thing. As names pop up, maybe this is worth exploring. Give me as much info you can so that I can kind of go forward. If you have a connection, please let me know. It's always easier when that's the case. But yeah, I'll put that list together so that we have that. The next item, speaking of money, is actually Chris, donation request to UTA.
Yeah, so I think a couple years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, I think that Laura Hansen, was the planning director, mentioned that UTA might be willing to make a donation to us. At the time, most of us really weren't thrilled about it because it's like, well, what if we want to tell them off? Right? And if you tell somebody off who's giving you money, then the money might end, might stop. But my original thought was, no, we don't want to do that, just simply because it could make it appear like we're we're in we're in the pocket of UTA.
Right.
But at this point, after spending a good grundle of money to have Curtis do what he's doing, I'm just wondering, okay, well, maybe we make the ask, and if with the understanding that it's just for our advocacy, and there are going to be times when we will say that we don't like what you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say we don't necessarily even have to say that, because once what is it? There are no give backs. What is
Right.
that like in no give backs?
Yeah.
You say they can't take it back once they give it to us.
Once the money's in the account.
Once the money's in the
yeah.
account, it's
There's
not.
plenty of politicians.
Funding requests.
There's plenty of politicians that have perfected this model of saying, we're going to take the money, but we don't necessarily agree with what they say. And
Right.
I also think that one of our goals should be to collaborate and be on the same team with them, because we're all trying to get the same thing done. So.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I've said publicly is that, we are adversarial allies to UTA, right? I mean, we want UTA to succeed, but if they're screwing up, we're going to call them on it. And, I said that when I met with Beth Holbrook. I'm going to say that when I meet with Jeff Fox, and just say, hey, we definitely want to work with you. We definitely want to improve things. But, if we do this via experiment and it doesn't work, we're going to say it didn't work and it's a bad idea. And we're going to say, here are ideas for something better. Randy, go ahead.
My wife says that same thing to me every day at breakfast.
There you go. So, I mean, I'm not opposed personally. I think that if UTA has money to give us, it's certainly in their interest for us to be advocating for better transit, right? So it's not as if there's a weird conflict of interest there. We have similar interests. And so I'm more than happy to pursue that route as well, and see if they're willing to help. So If the board is kind of okay with that, I can pursue that a little bit further, a little bit harder.
Unless anybody has any more comments, I'll just make the motion that we have Curtis go and ask for money from UTA.
There a second?
Before we vote on that, I just want to what is it in Robert's rules? Point of personal privilege, I guess.
Sure.
Appropriate. So, what's been the relationship with other transit advocacy type groups like UTRU in other states with their transit agencies in terms of donations? And then, of course, since this is a donation to a 501c3, we're not necessarily, like we all said, not on the hook for whatever with them. And then I guess the other concern I had was like, how much are we thinking about asking for?
Sure.
Well,
okay,
so.
Oh, go ahead, Chris.
Yeah. So the first thing on the first question is when we started, there weren't a lot of transit riders unions, but since we started, there's been others that have popped up. And Mike, I think you'll remember the ones that we looked at were Los Angeles and Seattle. Those were the two unions. Los Angeles was a big one. How they treated their agency is they sued their agency for millions and millions of dollars and won back in the early 90s, because basically what was happening is the Los Angeles transit system were giving poor people poor buses and poor routes, and weren't, it was basically just a discrimination, right? If you wanted poor service, you'd go to where the poor people lived. So they basically banded together and did it through, with just sheer force of people working. Well, we don't have the same problems that LA has. We have similar. So I think the adversarial type nature of the transit unions in general kind of goes against our favor, but we're putting a spin on it. We're making it so that we're positive. Like Curtis says, we're partners with adversarial allies, right? So as far as that goes, I think and this is something UTA had talked to us about, if I remember correctly. And so they were thinking somewhere in the neighborhood of $3,000 to $5,000. And I would say that we ask for I don't know, we ask for 5 or 8. And then
honestly, I mean, I would ask for 10 to 15, but I'll ask for $1 million. But
well, sometimes it helps to know, what are you asking the money for? So I'm been reading like Better Buses, Better Cities, and some other stuff. Campaign coordinators or staffing in order to do the community outreach and organizing, and how much those would be for 10 to 20 hours sketching out. It seems that most of the transit alliances that have had success in other cities have had staffs of 2 to 5 people. They aren't huge organizations, but they need some boots on the ground, so to speak.
Yeah, but most of those organizations have relied heavily on volunteers. Like the Sacramento Transit Riders Union, they're all volunteers, and they all do what we do, but they're more active, right? They make the signs, they go to the meetings. So I think, and this is based on what we talked about last month, is I think this money basically goes to Curtis for operation of pulling everything together. I think that's really what the ask is going to be for. And I think we're probably, would we figure out $4,000 or $5,000 short?
Yeah. I think so. Just to kind of drop back. Sorry, Randy, I'll let you go in just a second. But just to drop back, right now we are just in the exploratory phase, right? We are just seeing if UTA is even open to the idea. We're not signing anything. We're not giving budgets. We're not doing anything. I mostly am just looking for permission to kind of breach the subject, because is this the type of organization that we want to do, where we are this adversarial ally? And I wouldn't want to make that decision just as the ED. So that's all I think we should be looking at right now. We're not signing anything. We're not even putting budgets together. The next item I want to talk about, though, may be something UTA may want to fund. But before we move on, Randy, you had a thought.
I was just going to say, I don't know that we want to ask for funding for, to pay for people or staff or anything, but we have, like, if we do the maps, we have printing costs. If we do posters or display things, we need to print those. If we want to have a tent or something, or some kind of a pop-up display that shows our logo, we have some costs in that. The mapping program that you were talking about that you pay for, that maybe we can get paid for, or some of those things that are like hard costs, but they're not just going in someone's pocket. They're there to further our purpose.
Yeah, and I think just based on what Curtis says, this is just truly exploratory to see. I mean, they may have changed their mind, right? There's been a lot of turnover in the last 3 or 4 years. They may have changed their mind, or they may not even think it's a good idea anymore. So again, unless anybody has any other questions, I'll since I think we've answered John's point of order, then I think we'll just we'll take it to a vote. I've made the motion, Curtis.
So the motion is just to allow me to explore the option. How do I want to put this? The motion is for me to explore the willingness of UTA to possibly give us funds. Just see if they're open to the idea. And then I'll tack on, report back, let you guys know kind of what they say, and then we can make some future decisions from there, but just exploratory. So that's the motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. I see seconds all around, so I'm assuming all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? I see none. Okay, so I will do that as part of the conversation, and just kind of see where we're at. Okay. Just writing this down. I know we're recording it, but still. Okay. All right, so the next item, it's kind of twofold, are UCAIR grants. I will start off just kind of by talking about one of the ideas that I was originally going to be proposing to UCAIR, and I still am. And Mike, I need to get your letter of support for the Rail Association. So the idea that I am proposing specifically from UTRU to UCAIR, so many U's, what I want to do is I want to put together basically a advocacy outreach training session. And so what this looks like is I've identified 15 locations. Let me pull it up. I had it up here really quick. Share my screen.
I don't know.
Got to carry it over here. So you should be able to see my screen now. So basically, this is like even the longer version than what it's supposed to be. But basically, I wanted to like do a community outreach to 15 communities that are either that don't have access, either due to just their access or because they are economically disadvantaged. So for example, starting at the top of the valley, North Ogden, Roy, Clearfield, North Salt Lake in the Rose Park area, Salt Lake near the university, Magna Kearns, Taylorsville, South Jordan, Draper, Tooele, American Fork, Saratoga Springs, and Spanish Fork. I want to basically hold meetings at local community centers, things like that, I guess I'll keep this up here, that focus on, what is a history of transit in Utah? What do zoning laws do? What the role the legislature plays, counties play, cities play, and how individuals can actually affect change, whether it's, showing up to council meetings, how you can use social media to increase advocacy, how you participate and get on planning commissions, how do you contact policymakers? So what do the letters look like? What do the phone calls sound like? What happens when you're shaking that person's hand? And then based off of the specific location, who those people actually are, we'll have the photos, we'll have the list, we'll have the contacts, and then how you can either support candidates or run for office yourself. So I'm picturing roughly a 2-hour outreach, training and advocacy session, roughly 10 to 15 people per, but basically going up and down the valley. and saying, this is what it looks like. If it's successful, I would love to expand it out to the Cedar Cities and the St. Georges and the Moabs and the Nephis and yeah, all of those places in between. But I kind of view this, at least from the UCAIR standpoint, as kind of a pilot program to see if it would even work. And then if that doesn't work, now I can start exploring that with UTA. I'm sure they'd be interested in people advocating for more funds for them. So that's what I am proposing to UCAIR or to UCAIR. So that's my portion of it. Are there any questions on that?
How's the response been so far, Curtis? And is this within the, I know the grant called for like emissions reductions, so how have they responded to?
I have not had the opportunity to reach out to them yet on this one in particular, mostly because of what you were working on, and I'll give you a chance to talk about that in just a second. But I will be playing it up as a role of, this helps reduce emissions because if we get more people advocating for more transit, there will be less cars, blah, 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 blah down the line. I can tailor this a little bit to a lot of different grants, but that's the angle I'm going to attack specifically with UCAIR. So yeah, any other questions on that in particular? I've reached out to Mike as far as the Rail Passengers Association just to get a letter of support. I've also reached out to Sweet Streets. I can never say it slowly or quickly, but should be able to get a letter of support from them. I'm going to try, if I can get it in time, work an angle with Heal Utah as well, and just kind of see where we're going. So I'm going to take a stab at it. Even if it doesn't go this time, I think it is a solid thing that I can use at other grants as well. So I don't think it's just going to be a waste of time if this doesn't go through on this particular one. But yeah, so that's what I've been working on for the UCAIR grant. If there's no other questions, then I'll actually pass it over to John so he can talk about his UCAIR grant and how the Transit Riders Union can probably assist with that.
Thanks, Curtis. Yeah, so I am putting together a UCAIR grant focused on van pooling and using the UTA's van pool service for commuting purposes here at the U. Apparently, there's quite a few vans. There's about 400 vans in the entire UTA van pool pool, so to speak, and they're looking to expand this as well. I think there's at least one person on our board that uses the van pool, and so the hope here was to get, we initially were thinking about night shift workers, people who didn't have good access to transit around 11, 12 p.m. But then speaking to commuter services and the active transit groups at the U, turns out that the parking crunch is a big issue here and finding spaces is a big issue. And so they think a lower hanging fruit would be just regular day shift workers, getting people here to work at 7 or so for the 7 to 5 shift, 7 to 3 shifts. And so I'm tailoring it in that manner. Idea being emissions reductions, gets to use UTA services, gets to use UTA buses, but then adding a little spin to it, which is looking at the emissions reductions, but also the mental health benefits, and using an app or a smartphone in order to do some surveys before and after, and looking at people's activity and physical activity levels as it relates to transit. And so whether that's like a Fitbit or an app, I have a lower cost app that is an open source app that can be implemented for that. There's some stuff we're kind of figuring out. It's probably in the 10 to 20,000 range. The role for UTRU is around putting together a similar type of training session / transit advocacy packet, an education packet that would go to each of the people who are in the van pool, and basically serve as like fertile recruiting grounds for us, but also getting them to be familiar with how to use the UTA system, how to use the apps and stuff on the stuff that UTA already has, and figure out the schedules, but also how to engage effectively with the system so that people stick with this and become transit advocates after the trial period is over. So that's the basic of it. The grant is for 1 year, and so it would run from January to December. The letter of intent's due next week, which I was going to put UCAIR down as a supporting organization. I already have University of Utah down as supporting commuter services, and UTA has said there would be vans available. I'm trying to push them on maybe an in-kind donation of discounting the vans as they're $250 a month, plus a certain fee per passenger as a cost, and so it can get expensive. So if they're able to discount that, that would be great too. So that's what it is. What do you guys think of UTRU's role and of the idea?
So just thinking of some of the uses for it, you talked about daytime users or whatever, but what about some of the smaller events that finish up after the regular service is done, like the some of the concerts that they have down at Vineyard Park, or some of the downtown events or festivals that finish up after the tracks is over with, especially on Sundays.
Yeah, so the focus for this was going to be on healthcare workers, frontline workers, and getting them to and from, and then that gives me some population control as well, in terms of being able to identify the groups, being able to map out where all of our employee population is, being able to reach out to people specifically, being able to involve their bosses as well, and managers. And so that was kind of the idea. Although, yeah, for sure, I'm learning as I'm engaging with commuter services at the U and engaging with the people at the U who are in charge of the tracks and transit integration, etc. They, building those relationships and learning a lot more. Like for example, there used to be a shuttle that the U ran to the front runner, and the UTA used to have the 2X or the 2 Express, which would go directly from the front runner and start dropping you off on campus on the various stops on campus, and then that was it. There was no stops in between. And I know quite a few people who would take the front runner, but now don't have a good connecting option. So as I'm finding these things out, it feeds back into UTRU, our work, as well as some of the concerns you're bringing up, Randy. That's something that I will also be sure to discuss coming back in the other direction as part of the convo. But I think it's outside the scope of the grant, if that makes sense.
Sounds good. I missed the connection with the healthcare part. Sorry.
Oh, Curtis, you're muted.
Sorry about that. Yeah, no, I just noticed it because it told me. So, John, it sounds like you're looking for a motion to basically have a letter of support officially from UTRU. So is there that? I'm willing to bet you're making that motion. Is there a second to that?
Yeah.
I'll second.
Chris seconds. Before there's a vote, any other discussion? Otherwise, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I'll what is it?
Yeah.
Recurse myself. What is it?
Because I don't know.
Austin did just drop off, just to let you know, but we still do have a quorum, so it still carries. Okay. Let's see. Last item, or 2 more items actually. Just the organizations to contact. An update on that. As was kind of talked about a little bit earlier, I put together a Google Doc related to that. Earlier, I kind of reached out. This is probably what I was thinking of. Just like here, what are the organizations that people have specific connections to? So you all should have access to that Google Doc. If you've lost it, let me know. I'll give it back to you. But it's kind of the same idea as with the fundraising. If there are like-minded organizations, if you have a connection to it, I'm trying to populate that list on top of everything else that I'm doing. So if you think of people, if you think of organizations, just please pop them in to that Google Doc so that I can kind of follow up with it. Give me as much information, just like with the fundraising. Give me as much information as you can so that I can talk to the right people as quickly as possible. So yeah, I just kind of want to give that update. I'm going to try to also include, like, here's the most recent activity based off of, whatever that organization is, if I've even talked to them at all, or where we're at. So it also kind of gives you an idea of what I'm working on as well. And so the last agenda item that I have is just an advisory committee recruitment. So we've obviously got our board populated. I was just kind of wondering if the board would be open to the idea of other advisory committees, maybe that focus on the west side is kind of what I was thinking, or Davis County, or other advisory committees that are kind of focused specifically on specific areas. Obviously, that would require recruitment, but that is also a way to further engage members to be more involved.
So you're talking about auxiliary committees.
Yeah, I mean, just like auxiliary committees, as far as more focused, more local, as far as what their needs are, they can kind of come up with their ideas and report back. As the board, you guys would ultimately kind of take whatever they say and either, yeah, that's a good idea, or no, that isn't where we want to go. But it kind of ties into the idea that we are, member focused and doing what members want. And so, I think it'll also make it easier for us to say, hey, you live in Ogden, here's something you can do. Yeah, our board is full, quote unquote, right? But this is also a way that you can still have a very real impact. And then basically I would report back whatever their activities were, what they feel they want to be working on. So, in an alternate universe where we've been doing this for 2 or 3 years, maybe they would be the ones organizing the Vineyard event, right? And so very similarly, once the Ogden BRT goes in, maybe they're the ones that organize that event, right? So we can have rural outreach, we can have all these sorts of things. I mostly just wanted to bring the idea up so that we can make sure that we are giving members things to do besides just reading a newsletter every 3 months and showing up to a convention.
I like reading the newsletter.
No, newsletters are great, but if we give people ways to be involved.
So let me so initially when I read this, I thought you were talking, so in our bylaws, we have the ability to have an advisory committee that oversees what we actually do. So initially I thought this is what you were talking about, but no, I am fully, I fully encourage when we started the union, what I had envisioned was that we would have sub unions or chapters. So, if you were a front runner fan, you would have the front runner chapter, and that's and so like Mike would be fully on that board. He would be the engineer of that train because he's the train guy. But no, I think it's what we have to do to put to move the union forward so that we all aren't doing all of the work everywhere at every time, because it does get exhausted. Like I tell people, when I started in politics 10 years ago, I was 6'2", blonde hair, blue eyes, 180 pounds. 35 years old, and here I am 10 years later, a 56-year-old, 5'4", 200-pound, short, dumpy man.
You were Chris Strapping.
Yeah, I was. Now look at me.
Yeah. Okay.
So I like that idea. So just a couple of other thoughts on groups. So there's the ski bus people, ski and operators in the ski resorts, because they have a lot to say and they have a strong voice. Healthcare, education, religious groups, and like you said, the unlakers. So Tooele, Weber, Utah County, Nephi, whatever.
Yeah. I mean, ideally, I would love to have a chapter in every county in the state, or maybe advisory committee wasn't the best term. But again, finding ways for people to get
chapters.
What's that? Chapters. That's a good way of doing it.
Chapter recruitment.
Or a committee
or something. Just we'll see where it goes. But at the very least, again, assuming I have the board's blessing on that, I can start to kind of craft those specific groups. Randy, kind of to your point, I like the issue related. I think that there should be issue related and geographic related. And so I'll start to put that out there and see what we can start doing. And then of course I would be the one that kind of reports back and does all that sort of stuff to you guys.
Just a lot of administration for you to manage all those. Do you have too many?
It's not that bad. It's not that bad.
And most of the people that are not part of the, Salt Lake core would have similar issues. So that's why I
Mhm.
lumped them all together, like with Ogden and Tooele, and maybe Utah County isn't really the same, but
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I mean, the nice thing about this is we can break them up, right? I mean,
Yeah.
we can always make a smaller group out of the bigger group once we kind of hit a critical mass and say, hey, you know, we've had the Weber Morgan Davis forever. Maybe it's time we just split up Davis and Weber or whatever. But
Okay.
that's down the road once membership starts to grow. But it's at least a starting off point, and then we can kind of build from there and see what happens.
Definitely in favor of the chapter type organization, not the advisory committee that oversees us. No thanks.
Sure.
But yeah, I think that's really important, Curtis, to be thinking along these lines. I'm envisioning something like every town in the county has their own chapter, or there's
Right, yeah.
certain sections of the UTA where it's like the red line section and the blue line and the, you know, or the 211 bus or whatever. I think it's really important that we have people in each kind of geographic region who are members that are given something to do, as you said. And some of those things to do include interviewing bus riders in their neighborhoods, going and checking on their stops, contacting their reps, serving them, talking to their community councils. There's so many things we can be asking people to do. I think organizing it geographically would probably make the most sense in my mind, because then we can hit up House districts and reps and state reps and, you know, state Senate districts, etc., so that we have this kind of sustained pressure growing from all around the Wasatch Front and, like, you know, ultimately throughout Utah. So yeah, heartily in favor. The more militantly structured, the better.
Sure.
Definitely need to make sure we're using our Second Amendment rights to secure the UTA. Sure.
All right.
But,
Again,
yeah, I've been reading
it's
some labor organizing stuff, so I
that-
love when it gets a little like, all right, this is
See,
good.
this is exactly what I was talking about, flipping over a bus and setting it on fire. There's a time for that. We're not anywhere near that, but if
No.
it happens,
It's called what's it called? Like auxiliary flank, I think it is. Or right, where you have, or the radical flank approach, which is you go, you know, people you agree with in theory, and then they're just like burning stuff down. You're like, we're not going to be quite that radical.
we're
We're
not
going
gonna
to
know.
around to make you look better and have a seat at the table.
All right. Well, now that we have provided Exhibit C,
I think that actually would be a good publicity stunt, because we could say we could tell the media that we're going to tip over a bus and set it on fire.
to be fair,
Turns out it's like a Matchbox bus.
Yeah,
well, no,
exactly.
Cache Valley is selling their buses, so we could pick one of those up and do it that way. Okay. Last thing is just an open forum. This can be as long as or as short as you guys like.
I'm going to make a motion before this to approve the chapter / committee recruitment and give people something to do productive.
Sure. Is there a second on that?
I'll second it.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Doesn't see that. All right. So yeah, I will start. It sounds like you want me to do the focus geographically at first, which is not a problem. And I'm sure we will come up with a more formalized system of, hey, do we want to do it this way or that way? But I think for right now, we can focus on geography. If someone wants to do something like a ski bus or something like that, we can certainly talk about approving that as well. But it sounds like the approval is.
Yeah, and I wanted to
specifically
make
towards
a quick comment, because because you kind of alluded to this about an advisory committee, but the bylaws basic. So the idea behind the advisory committee was supposed to be people that had nonprofit experience, that wouldn't be doing the hands-on work that our board typically could be doing. And I know we talked about it from the very, I mean, it's in the bylaws, but we've never actually had an advisory committee set up, somebody that you know knows nonprofits, or you know. And the idea behind it was to get maybe legislators, previous employees of UTA, that sort of thing. So it really was. It wasn't a way to tell us what we should be doing, but more of a way of kind of guidance in what a normal nonprofit would do. Because when we started this, Mike, if you remember, it was like we had no idea what we were doing as far as what a nonprofit, what do nonprofits do?
Sure.
Besides not make money.
Well, hopefully we can change that with the fundraising list that I'll be sending out and working on. So, yeah, open forum at this point. If there's anything anybody wants to discuss in particular that we haven't already talked about, now's your chance.
I just have, so Mike, maybe you can answer this question. Maybe you've been paying attention to it, but the Fourth West light rail extension, do you know much about what they're planning on doing there?
I saw some different alternatives being kicked around. So there's not anything firm yet, but I'm trying to remember where I saw those.
I think it was on building Salt Lake. I think they
yeah,
did.
it was on
I think
Building
that's
Salt
right.
Lake.
So this seems really crucial, and it seems like something that we probably ought to try to get ourselves shoved in the middle, if as it were. Because if I remember right, there's 3 different competing ideas, but to me, and I can't remember which one it was, but there's only really one that to me that made sense. And that is that everything comes down from the university, goes to the Salt Lake Central, and then off to the airport. If I remember correctly, but I could be mistaken. And then there were some other ideas where it would go, where it wouldn't, there would actually be a bridge between Third West and Salt Lake Central, something like that, where that, so just east of the
Salt Lake Central.
Yeah, Salt Lake Central, there's some development that's going on there. And so one of the ideas is that there would be a walkway between Salt Lake Central and this tracks line. But to me, that doesn't make sense. To me, it needs to be right there at the, where all the trains come in, hence the name Salt Lake Central, right? If you're gonna have a hub, everything needs to be right there at the hub.
Right.
So if you wouldn't mind, could you kind of poke around on that and take a little bit deeper dive into that and figure out number one, what's really going to be better for users, and then number two, the time frame. When is all this supposed to come out, and is there a potential that it can be shoved down the list? And the only reason why I'm saying that is because having looked at the maps and looked at what needs to happen, really there needs to be a train that goes from Salt Lake to or from the airport to the university. But then
Right.
what happens to the red line? What happens to the green line? Right? And then that backs up everything down the line. And so it makes a big difference what we get behind and what we push, because as we've seen, once they put something into concrete, it rarely will ever get changed.
So, Mike, is that something you're willing to do? Look into a little bit deeper?
Yes,
Awesome.
I will look into it. And I also am going to send out an email with some upcoming Utah Rail Passengers Association events.
Okay.
And so go ahead and spread the word.
Yeah, we'll cross promote that. That's not a problem. Okay. Anything else anybody wants to talk about?
I've been reading a few books that I thought would be helpful to share with the group, and perhaps if people haven't read, I thought they'd be useful. One is Better Buses, Better Cities. Have you guys read that? Know that one?
Not yet.
I've heard of it.
I can share a Google Drive, Google Doc with it there, and it's half a planning manual and half an activist manual, and it's very well researched. I've read about half of it so far. Very well researched and laid out, plain, easy to read, and also pretty inspiring. Talks a lot about the successes that have been had in creating transit, like Boston. One that really struck me and something to think about was Boston had these pop-up BRTs. So they partnered with a local foundation, the Bar Foundation, Environmental Foundation, and region and certain cities within the MBTA service area. I think the first one was either Revere or Everett, and I'm from Boston, so I'm trying to remember which one it was. These were a few years back, and basically what they did was they dedicated a lane to the bus, started running much more frequent, and got the MBTA to commit to slightly more frequent service, or some kind of coordination, but for relatively low cost, basically painted a lane, got rid of the parking on that lane, and did a trial period, and that did a funded trial period with a foundation, with the partner foundation, and incredibly popular, expanded out to multiple cities, and kind of changed some of the conversation in those communities around around transit. And so, there's a lot of great stuff in that book that is great examples we can draw from. So I thought it would be, if people have the time and the interest to do kind of like a mini book club, maybe we could read it before the next meeting, or read certain chapters before the next meeting if people were interested.
Sure. Yeah, I think send that out. We can certainly kind of take a look at it and throw it in our schedules. I think we can at least see what's going on there and take from there.
All right, I've got one more thing that I want to ask opinion about, but bikes on buses. How do you feel about bikes on buses?
Like on the bus itself?
Well,
like
the reason why I'm asking, so and this has been something that UTA's been, I mean, it's the technically there's only room on a bus with 3 bikes, right? That's all the bike rack will fit. Well, there was and I don't know who, one of the UTRU account followers or somebody we follow posted a picture that showed 3 people with their bikes on the bus because there were already 3 bikes on the rack. So while I think bikes on buses is good. If you look at the #1 country that has bikes, the Netherlands, they all ride their bike. Did you know that you cannot take your bike on a bus in the Netherlands? If it folds up into a suitcase, you can, but ultimately you can't ordinarily take your bike on the bus. So one of the things that, and again, it's not that I'm opposed to bikes. I'm opposed to 30 bikes on a bus, because I think the reason why we end up having now, where we're getting so many people on the bus with bikes, is because you end up with a lot of service holes. I mean, and I showed you that, the 1/4 mile stops. Well, if it's easier to take your bike and ride your bike from a stop if your stop is 2 miles away from where you need to go. So I just kind of wanted to see what everybody thought about bikes on buses. And I mean, we've had a relationship with the bike brigade for a while now, but I'm just not so sure that as a long-term solution that having everybody bring their bike on the bus is going to solve transit problems. So what do you feel? How do you feel about that?
Well, my feeling on that is that would be the best problem that we could have, because if there's 30 bikes on a bus, that just means there's 30 people on there that are using it, and it's great. And where do you draw the line? How many shopping carts or wheelchairs or all that stuff. So, I mean, if we have people that have a bike and they want to ride the bus, then there shouldn't be a limit, and that they should just figure out how to deal with it.
I think there'll come a point when we have the infrastructure, when we have the infrastructure of the Netherlands for biking, and that will necessitate or have a different conversation around bikes on buses as they've had. Because if you look at some of their stations are incredible with bike storage and with secure bike parking, and then just the bike infrastructure there is just world class. And we have very fragmented cycling infrastructure and frankly pretty dangerous cycling infrastructure with these paints and sharrows and all this BS. And so I think it's like indicative of two things, and it's a good thing I think to document it, because we can start a conversation that helps fodder for a conversation with elected representatives, especially and transit planners, is that it shows that people want to take their bike around. It shows people want to use the UTA, and it shows that they're using these stopgap. There's these stopgap areas, and especially if we're finding areas where there's like a ton of people on a bike, like we should be talking to them to find out why you're taking your bike on this. Are you doing a rails to trails thing? You're trying to get to the Jordan River Trail. You're trying to get to some other place, or are you trying to get your business done? And why aren't you going from that point to that point on your bike? How far are you going? So finding out more about what it is that's driving people to do this, and how they're utilizing it, talking to our members, so to speak, I think would be good. I think eventually we should get to a point. If we get to the point where we've got the infrastructure and the transit to say we shouldn't have bikes on there, then we can, that's a success.
Yeah, I think my inclination is to believe that people usually bring their bike on the. I mean, I don't know if I saw a guy on the bus with a bike in a bag of golf clubs. So it's like my inclination is to believe that most people are going to bring their bike on the bus because the distance between wherever they came from or to wherever they're going is greater than the distance that they would want to walk, which means that there's a service gap there. I mean, it could be going on a trail. You're right. And I think that we would definitely need to figure that out. But it would seem to me at some point that means we have to have that discussion that you can't. I don't know that you could have 30 bikes on a bus.
So I'm just going to put out the warning. I got the thing saying we got 5 minutes left, and that was about a minute and a half ago. So I think that in my personal opinion, I think we should wrap this up too, unless anybody has something else to say. I think it is a symptom, as you guys have kind of been saying, of inadequate service. And so I think for right now, I think this is also the type of thing that we should put out to our members specifically. We can run a couple Twitter polls. We can say, hey, what's your opinion on this? Again, driving that engagement and see what people are having to say. And so I think we can go ahead and do that as well. That way, we're not necessarily alienating the bike walk provos or anything like that, but just tell us your story, right?
Ellen ticked off the bike people a couple of years ago. So
yeah, I don't want to piss off the bike people.
Yeah.
I'm a bike people. People.
Me too. And Curtis, I love when you were on KRCL or you were on Red Line and talked about how riders, when you're walking, riding your bike, or riding the bus or train, you are a transit rider. And I was like, it's all part of that system. And with the e-bikes, we're going to see this evolution of transit in an interesting way. And so, yes, I make a motion to engage the bicycling community on how they utilize our transit system.
There we go. So is there a second on that? Looks like I'm getting thumbs up. I'll just say that it was second and all that good stuff. Okay. Well, I think we're about to wrap up here. Just for housekeeping, I will go ahead and put the minutes together just as I did before. Please read them over. If there's anything I missed, let me know. Otherwise, give me a day or two on that. Otherwise, the next board meeting is scheduled for Thursday, August 18th, 5:30, presumably via Zoom. So yeah, just keep that on your calendar as well.
Teams.
So unless Teams, sorry, it's like Kleenex, right? Or Band-Aid.
It's like Kleenex.
Yeah. All right. Well, unless there is anything else in the last.
Did you get my business cards?
Oh, I need to get those ordered for you.
Also, our Google Drive stuff.
Yeah, so we just got the team set up so we can do that. So I'll put that together too. Chris, I'll get you your business cards.
I need business cards too, Curtis.
Sure.
So many nurses want my business card. That sounded odd. Sorry.
It's okay. Does anybody else, Mike or Randy, do you want business cards as well? Yes, no, maybe so. Mike, no. Randy, yes, no.
I'd love an electronic image of a business card to be
Sure.
with me.
I can do that. Okay. I will get those together. So physical ones for Chris and John, e-card for Randy. Mike shaking his head no. Okay. All right. Well, with that, I will go ahead and call it a meeting. We just need one final motion to adjourn.
I motion that we adjourn the meeting.
Technically, you don't need a motion to adjourn if it's on the agenda.
On the agenda. All right. Well, it's seconded, non-debatable. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
All right.
And
Well, we'll
bye.
see you in a month, and just keep an eye on your inbox. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks. See ya.
Thank you.